Wrapping things up here on a crossover Thursday episode of Locked On Commanders and Locked On Bucs. And before we get to what each team must do, let's talk about why could each team lose. I'm going to start this one off. The Buccaneers can lose this game because the defense is still suspect despite improvements. The injuries that they've sustained on the defensive side of the ball have been absolutely insane. I'm not going to go through all of them because it would be an entire episode in and of itself. It looks like Antoine Winfield Jr. is going to be good to go. Jamel Dean, his status is still kind of up in the air. I do lean towards Dean playing. But with that said, the Bucs had to sign Ryan Neal off of the street because they lost all three of their top safeties in a span of 2 weeks. Mike Edwards, who they were able to bring back, he goes down. They lose Jordan Whitehead to a car accident right before the Saints game. Christian Izien has been out. They lost their number 3 outside corner for the season back in that Commanders game. It's been a lot to overcome. And while they have been able to tread water through most of the season, they have been bailed out by the only offense in the playoffs that is top 5 in both passing and rushing. And their inability to cover the middle of the field with second and third stringers and practice squad guys is really concerning in this matchup against guys like Zach Ertz and Zacchaeus and Terry McLaurin.
Yeah, for the Washington Commanders side of things, I think it's really interesting because both these teams are kind of fairly similar, especially when you talk about like inconsistencies. And if the Commanders lose a game, it could be because they don't get off to a fast start. The first 9 games this season, they were scoring 16 points per game in the first half of games. In the last 8, they're averaging just 11. So that's a significant point drop off. And if you actually take off the 28-point first half outburst they had against the Tennessee Titans, who are not a very good team, for those who don't remember, that average actually drops to 9 points per game in the first half in the last 10 of the last 11 games. So they're not scoring a lot early on. And then the defense on the flip side of things, they're giving up 12 points per game in the second half in every game but one since October 20th. So that is not a good recipe for continued success. Now they've been able to continue success because of Jaden Daniels. But again, just like I've had a conversation with the Commanders fans for quite a bit this season, how long can you sustain winning football, having to put it all on your rookie quarterback in the third and fourth quarters? I don't know. We'll see if they can do it another week. Hopefully they don't do it another week. They put together a 60-point performance, 60-minute performance. 60 points would be impressive though too. But I think it's interesting, James, to see how similar these two teams are right now going into the postseason.
Yeah, no doubt about it. All right, what does each team have to do to win this game? Before we get to that, this week crossover Thursday episode of Locked On Commanders and Locked On Bucs is brought to you by PrizePicks. Download the PrizePicks app. Use code Locked On NFL to win $50 instantly when you play $5. So, David, you are the away team. I win the toss. I'll defer to you. What are the 3 things that the Commanders need to do in order to get a win on Wild Card Weekend?
Hey, man, look, as of late, the Commanders have not been winning coin tosses, even though it's weird. They won like 9 in a row, which was fantastic. And then they've lost like 3 in a row since. So that actually might happen. Number one thing you got to do is stop the buck, which of course is stop the Bucky. You got to, I don't know if you can stop Bucky Irving, but you just got to hope to contain him. Whatever it is, you got to bring him down. You mentioned yards after contact. Frankie Lou told me on Wednesday in the locker room, look, we know we got to get to him. We know we got to get to our fits. But not only that, we got to tackle this dude because if the first guy can't make him miss, there's a good chance the second guy's not going to have a chance. Or the first guy can't bring him down, rather. There's a chance that the second guy's not going to have the opportunity. Number 2, let Jaden loose. Look, as athletic as Jaden is, as impressive as he has been, there have been times, and I'm not necessarily saying that the Commanders have restricted him, but there have been times where Jaden seems to not necessarily want to steer into his athleticism earlier in the game. He kind of waits until it's a little bit later in the game, and sometimes that puts stress on both sides of the ball because there's not a lot of points being scored. So if I'm telling Jaden, saying, look, dude, this is the postseason. This is the time to let it all hang out. If you're not finding your reads early, go ahead and you lean on that athleticism like you need to. And then third, win on first down. Might even be more important than winning on third down because Dan Quinn is incredibly aggressive. If it's 4th and 3 or less, don't be surprised if you see Dan Quinn go for it. So that means if you can win on first down, make that second down shorter, make that third down shorter. Look, if it's 3rd and 6 and you can get it to 4th and 1, you may go with it. You may go for it if you're this Dan Quinn team. So winning on first down going to be incredibly important this game, especially with that struggling run game offense that you were talking about earlier.
All right. Well, the 3 things that the Buccaneers need to do. It's funny. My number 1 is the complete opposite of your number 1, and that is feed Bucky. I talked about it earlier. 3rd highest yards per carry by a rookie in NFL history. He's the NFL leader in yards per rush after contact. Now he's going up against a team that is near the bottom of the NFL in yards per rush allowed, with the Commanders giving up 4.8. The only teams worse The Saints and the Panthers, who Bucky just played in the last 2 weeks. The more Bucky gets involved early, the better. That's going to force the Commanders to commit to stopping the run and open things up down the field for Evans, for McMillan, for Otten, for Shep, the rest of the crew. But as we've seen through the latter half of the season, the offense for Tampa goes as Bucky goes. And in the 2 games since the bye where Bucky was not getting the ball early on, that was when the Bucs struggled. That was against the Cowboys a couple weeks ago and against the Saints last week. Bucky had 4 carries in the first half against the New Orleans Saints. It's got to be more. You've got to feed Bucky as often as possible. We're talking double-digit touches in the first half alone. Then it's the second thing, get early stops. The defense has been one where the stops have come in the second half. This time around, they need those stops early, and they need to jump out to a quick lead. You just talked about the Commanders starting slow. The Bucs have been really good about starting fast. So an early stop or two combined with their ability to start fast on offense is going to put the Commanders into come from behind mode where the offense is a little more one-dimensional. That's going to play into the strength of Todd Bowles being able to unleash some pressure, try to force mistakes, sacks, takeaways, but the defense cannot allow quick scores and spot the Commanders 10, 14 points from the jump and then rely on the defense to step it up in the second half. The third thing, stop hurting yourself. I realize that this is like the most obvious thing of all time, but poor decision-making, bad turnovers, and oh my God, the penalties. The Bucs were called for 12 penalties last week against the Saints. 9 of those were on offense. That can't happen. This game's going to be difficult enough without making things even harder on yourselves. So big gains negated by holding penalties, big stops negated by offside or defensive holding. You cannot let preseason mistakes derail you in the postseason. This Bucs team is a dangerous one when they aren't out there beating themselves. So do not give Dan Quinn and the Commanders any help by being stupid.